What's good, my ghouls and goblins? Pull up a chair, pour yourself a large glass of something red, and welcome back once again to another episode of your weekly horror movie podcast, Really Scared. My name is Taylor Click, and as always, I'm joined by, God, he's just never looked better, top goblin himself, Connor Breedlove. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Doing good.
You look great. What you got there? What you pouring out tonight? Is that a Merlot?
It's a sweet Shiraz.
Sweet Shiraz of the jam jar. I myself have gone ahead, and it's officially Christmas time. I got the Great Lakes Christmas Ale, a personal favorite of mine, and I am just drinking through it. It's that time of year, and I'm happy to have this back on the shelf. I'm no longer angry that pumpkin ale is gone. I've worked through it, and now I'm into this phase of the year. Got a great episode for you of Reely Scared. As you can see, no longer in the Skull Dungeon, at least not this week. I'm in the Purple Void. We're going to work our way through it. It's going to be just fine. We got a great episode this week. Welcoming on a friend of the show, dear friend, Nick Harley, for the very first time. That's somebody I've wanted to join us for quite a while, so I'm excited to finally get him in the hot seat. Thank you, Ghouls and Goblins, for joining us tonight, whether it be live or after the fact. We appreciate you. We love to see you. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening. Make sure you can catch us live every Thursday on this channel, Twitch and YouTube, as well as on your podcasting apps. After the fact, we go up the very next day. We have the Streamlabs in the bottom. If you want to support the channel, we appreciate you. We love you. You don't have to do it. You don't have to, but if you want to help the channel out, keeps the lights on, keeps the StreamYard bumping, and but you don't have to. You can leave your comments in the chat. We're going to pop them up all the same. Say what's up. We'd love to see you all the same. Thank you for joining us tonight. Really excited to talk about this movie. Been a long time since I watched it. And it's our first foray, surprisingly, having been doing this show for the last year and a half-ish, our first foray into the Alien franchise, which is surprising, I think. Surprising we haven't gotten there first, and maybe just as surprising that this is the movie to do it, but chronologically, I guess it makes the most sense, right?
Yeah, it's also the most confusing.
Interesting. Well, I guess we may as well get into it and figure it out, huh?
Why not? Let's do it.
Why not? Let's get our boy in there. Ghouls and Goblins, I would like you to welcome to the show, writer for Den of Geek, competitor in the movie Trivia Schmoedown, and most importantly, we graduated high school together. Welcome in, Nick Harley.
Woo!
Did you
excited to be here?
We did graduate high school together.
We absolutely did, yeah.
Go a far ways back. What an entrance. Welcome to the show, Nick. Great to see you. How are you?
How's it going? How you guys doing? I'm pouring my beer. I'm very excited to be on the show. Taylor and Connor, thank you so much for having me. I feel like this has been a long time coming.
I would agree. I feel like you've been on my potential guest list for quite some time, so I'm happy we could finally make dreams happen tonight.
I've been in your periph. I've been on the edges, but now I'm here.
You've been in my dreams and my nightmares. We got the favorite ghoul in the chat. Love to see her. Thank you for joining us tonight, Jessica. Always a pleasure. Always a treat. Look at this. Suge Knight. Love all three of these men. And all love of friend.
What's up, buddy?
Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Suge, famously terrible with scary movies, so I always appreciate him coming in. I'd love to know, Suge, if you've seen this one before, because we are covering a lot of Halloween movies, which are very much not your thing. Would love to know if you've ever watched Prometheus or any of the Alien films. Would love to get your take on that, Suge. Great to see you guys. Thanks for watching tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun with this one. We got a great crew and a great film to talk about. Nick, something I love to do whenever we bring people on this show. Of course, if you don't know, Ghouls and Goblins at Home, the format of the show is every single week we welcome on a guest, and that guest selects a scary movie of their choosing that we will discuss. So tonight, Nick has selected Ridley Scott's Prometheus, and I would love to hear why.
Listen, let's keep it very simple. I straight up love this film, dude. I straight up love this movie. I remember when this movie came out, it was somewhat of an event. I feel like, and it was an event in a way that I don't think like horror movies very often get the sense that they're also like having this big blockbuster moment. Like, I remember going to the theater with a big group of people, and like usually for movies that I want to see, I'm like mostly with myself or like one friend that is interested in it, or my girlfriend or something. But I remember like we had the whole crew out for this one. And I remember with the marketing for the film, there was so much multimedia elements going into it, little short films about some of the characters. And there was just like a really good marketing campaign, I think, behind it, which we can discuss in a bit, which may have hurt the film a little bit. But when the movie came out, I was just awed by it. I just think it was like a gorgeous movie, and I really was super entertained by it. And it was so rarely do you see like a franchise film that just has this level of ambition to it. I think everyone just expected like, oh, Alien prequel, like we're getting more aliens, like cool. And this movie is just not that movie, which I think
not at all
at the time like disappointed a lot of people because they were like, oh, we're gonna have a traditional Alien movie, and this movie is not that. And I kind of love that. I love it for being that. I love how much of a swing it is. And I just remember also that when it came out, there was this weird backlash to it, and I do think to this day, like there are some people that really hate this movie. It's kind of a polarizing film, and for whatever reason, I've just always loved it. It's one of those movies that I think definitely has its flaws, but at the end of the day, there's enough like very cool, very interesting things going on in it for me that it's one of those movies whenever it's on TV, I can't like turn it off. I always turn it on. I always watch it. I'm big fan of this movie. So excited to talk about it more.
I think you really nailed it on the head there, that it is a franchise movie that it doesn't do any of the isn't stuck to the same pitfalls that a lot of franchise movies are. And it's interesting because I think when it first came out, or when it was being marketed, it kind of had that mystery box flavor to it of like somehow it's attached to Alien, but like they weren't very forthcoming for how it would be. What would the link be? Like some of the trailers I remember were very referential to stuff where you could see it and go, oh, I know that had that like sound effect. I can still hear it in my head. That's very famous. I don't even know how to explain it. It's like a weird screaming banshee sound effect.
Yeah.
I think you can credit the mystery box to Damon Lindelof because
that's fair.
He's the writer on it, and he famously did Lost, which was very much that mystery box show that kind of like came up with the idea of the mystery box around TV or movies. So I think that's credited to him. But I remember being in the same boat. We were on vacation in Myrtle Beach, and I was like, we have to see this movie. So we went to like AMC that's in Myrtle Beach and saw it at midnight. It was like a midnight showing because midnight showings were still a thing. And I just remember just being like, what did I just see? Like, this was amazing.
Yeah. Isn't it so wild that like we don't have to do any of that midnight screening shit anymore? Like now everybody has every theater does assigned seats now. You don't have to line up. I remember like for a movie like Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, like in the last two installments, like having to get to the movie theater, like, well, if we want good seats and we all want to sit together, we're gonna have to get there at like 10 o'clock. Like, and the movie doesn't start until midnight. Like, thank God we don't have to do that. Now you can just go like 7 p.m. on a Thursday, no line.
Like 100%. And you have that friend who's like, I'm not going to get there till like right when it starts. And so you're like trying to space the seats out. And somebody's like, hey, dude, nobody's sitting there. I want that seat. Like there's always a problem. Like your body's making you sweat when you're just trying to see the movie.
Now I can like show up. I've gotten so good at it that I know exactly how long the previews are going to run for. So now it's like I can sit down right when the movie's starting, like regardless. It says
I had the privilege of working at movie theaters. So I know exactly how long their like bumpers are going to be in their trailer packs. I'm like, this movie's been out for 2 weeks. I know they cut it down to like 12 minutes.
Yeah.
So I know how to time to get there.
I got to tell you, man, this is like totally irrelevant to the topic, the conversation at hand. But like, I feel like trailers are getting even longer now to where I can leave the house like, because I always, you think you're like, okay, trailers are 20 minutes. If I get there with 10 minutes to kill, I'll watch a few trailers, movie starts. It's like now I can leave the house like at showtime get there, watch 4 more trailers for the maybe it's a sign of the time where they're just
they put advertisements in there now. I saw Eternals and they put some crypto bullshit in there, and I was
Matt
like,
Damon.
what the fuck is this Matt Damon shit? And it was a crypto commercial, and I was like, what the fuck? And then it just goes into like a trailer for Dog, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening right now?
I know exactly what you're talking about. There's like, it feels so intriguing. He's like, man, we've explored the stars, we've charted, like, kind of relevant to this. He's given kind of a go meet our maker speech, and he's like, crypto.com. We just bought a stadium. Great. And then there's that Demented Coke commercial where like he's playing World of Warcraft, and then you ever seen that where the monster hears him open a Coke and they stop fighting? Fucking
no,
demented.
I haven't seen that one yet.
That one's demented. Anyway,
I think it's now that LeBron James went from playing in the Warner serververse to now he plays in the crypto.com.
That's a great point. We live in a dystopia. Jessica's signing off. She's keeping it on brand in the chat. Personally walked away during a lot of the scenes because she was so scared, so she could understand if somebody hadn't watched the film. But Suge Knight hasn't seen this movie, but does love alien movies. That's actually pretty fascinating to me. May have to get him on here to talk about an alien sometime. And let's see, Jessica.
This is something on my topic list.
There are many times where I told Taylor that things looked like male genitalia, but there were also times where I saw some things that looked like female genitalia. A lot of genital representation. Yeah,
yes.
that's alien.
I had psychosexual in my notes, so I think you nailed the nail on the head there. I think that was totally intentional. The female and male genitalia, the end that the engineers pretty much swallowed up by lots of different genitalia, very, very interesting. But I'm sure we'll get to that portion of the film a little bit later.
Just having a good old time. H.R. Geiger, I think he did consult on designs in this movie too, which of course famously the guy who designs basically all the iconography of the original Alien. He designs the xenomorph, the space jockey, the ships, and all that weird sexual imagery just runs rampant through all his work, alien or not. So, yep, and that's true. Just in time for the genitals talk, you get it just in the same way that sometimes you go, oh, I'll skip some of the trailers and get there in time for the show. You guys skip some of the opening.
What anyone walking into the show right now just walked into the main event, the genital.
Like, oh, thank God I got here in time for the genital talk. A lot of the H.R. Geigerness is still present in this movie, which is great because that's like an element I feel as an Alien fan you get to see and recognize without hitting you over the head with sort of the nostalgic callback. It's like you got to keep the design work consistent, which makes it feel in the universe while still telling a story that's completely separate from what you already know. I was somebody who, coming out of this originally, I remember kind of lukewarm on it because I think I was one of those people just kind of hoping for more Alien, right? I was like, oh, Ridley Scott's come back for the first time since 1979 to work on these movies. I was like, here we go. The master is back. We're going to get a new Alien movie. And then Ridley Scott shows up in a very Ridley Scott fashion and goes like, I don't give a fuck about those aliens. Let me make this movie instead. I'll sell you on more aliens.
What I'm interested in? You know what I'm interested in? The space jockey. I don't give a fuck about the alien. I want to tell the story of the space jockey.
Of that giant person on a spaceship. Yeah, we're gonna go back to that.
And we're gonna reverse engineer a movie out of that.
Yeah, I feel like that's almost the pitch to Fox, right? Is like, I want to make a new Alien movie, and of course they all line up. They're like, oh my god, yes, finally. What is it going to be? And he actually, I want to explore all my thoughts on creationism instead, but we'll put an alien in at the very end. I mean literally the very end. I'm making something like
the xenomorph. No, it's not really a xenomorph.
I can't wait to talk about him.
Really say it's not the xenomorph.
But so what was your guys' connection with the Alien movies prior to this film? Like, were you somebody that was devotee? Because I know in a lot of circles, Alien, the original, well, I think they both have their camps, but I think for people that are more horror oriented, I think the first one is sort of seen as, some people really revere that movie, see it as this masterpiece. So I'm wondering what is your guys' relationship to that film or the franchise at large? Were you a really, really big fan, or was this something that you were more casually interested in? I'm curious.
That is a great question. Why don't you take it away, Connor?
No, I loved the Alien franchise leading up to this, and I remember just like seeing the trailer, and I was in my photo class. I just remember like I was supposed to be like editing pictures, and I was just watching the trailer over and over again, like trying to like figure out what it was going to be like. So, I mean, it being someone who loved Alien and Aliens and all the other ones, it did enough to capture my attention.
I was a total Alien kid, which you would think that's not like, I think two things that go hand in hand is being a kid and watching these movies. And I definitely wasn't allowed to, but and just in that sort of like 8-year-old, 10-year-old kind of way, you like find yourself to the shit that you love, even though you're not allowed to. Like, you go to a friend's house, his mom's got a copy of the movie you aren't allowed to watch. You pop it in the VHS player. I think the first Alien movie I saw was Alien 3.
Yeah, the same first one.
And just
I watched it on FX, DVD on TV.
DVD on TV, wow.
DVD on
what a
TV,
call.
yeah.
What a shout out. I thought it was incredible. I thought it was terrifying, disgusting, made me feel really weird in a lot of different ways. But then I was hooked, and I remember somehow like heisting my mom into renting Alien Resurrection from Blockbuster. Don't know how I pulled that trick off. But again, like, you know, and you're a kid, so your quality bar ain't really where it is as you get older. So I thought, again, it was, you know, I actually, you know what? I think Alien Resurrection has some fun stuff in it still.
Me too.
It's crazy that you mentioned the quality bar, because it is strange how like our taste for things gets more refined, because I used to think Flubber was the greatest movie ever.
Well, it is. Of
Yes.
Classic Kino film. No, yeah, I've been in, and I had like Alien toys, right? I had comic books. Like I was super in on Alien, Predator, Terminator, like all that stuff growing up. And then as I got older, that's actually when I see what are widely regarded as the good ones, the first two. And no, I would say like I would consider the first one really, for all intents and purposes, like a perfect film. Like I couldn't even pick my spot of like, oh, I wish they did this or they could have improved on that. It's like, and it's just such you almost can't even conceive of a movie like that now, where it's like so self-contained, based on nothing, a simple concept, and then the execution is just so great that it births this crazy universe of films and media. It's getting a TV show, like it's immortal. There's always going to be somebody
about
else.
that. Isn't Noah Hawley from Legion and Fargo? He's doing it. Yeah, that should at least be interesting. And I hear that he's like, I think he's basing it on Earth. I think I read
that's
something
what I've
like
heard
that
as well. Yeah, I'm not sure where it happens in the timeline of things, and I'm also seeing some. I have no idea what the source was in this. So it could be totally off, but it reportedly will have some weird like body swap concept to it as well, which is, you know, not something that's come up
to Alien versus Predator Requiem.
Yeah, we're looping it back into the canon.
I honestly think that's the only one in the franchise I should see. That's the only one I haven't seen out of all the Predator films and Alien films. The only one that I haven't seen is AVP Requiem, but I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why.
You almost can't see it. Those fuckers forgot to bring lights to the set. It's so dark. Yeah, you can't see shit in that movie.
I've seen like parts of it on television, but I've never watched it all the way through.
You know what? That movie should have rule, right? It's like aliens and predators fighting in the suburbs. You're like, oh, that should be a 5 out of 5 time. You'd really just have to drop the bag so hard for me to not love that movie.
Yeah.
And yet, here I am. I've got no reverence for AVP Requiem.
Even the first AVP is such a like just weird film, which like even as a kid, which I should have just left that movie being like, yeah, that was awesome. I was like, you know, I have some issue. Like I'm like 10 years old being like, you know, I have some points. I have some notes for this film.
Yeah, no, exactly. I vividly remember being very bored with it as a kid. I was like,
Yeah, it should be the 10 out of 10 best film of all time, and it's just not quite. Jessica loves the idea of this film expanding on the world of Alien. A lot of franchises just continue on what happens next. Well, they took this to the beginning. Connecting the pieces is fun. I might be inclined to agree, because it does it in a way that's not egregious, I would say, which is, again, I kept thinking of if you made this movie now, in like a post like Force Awakens world where like whenever they want to bring these back, it's just like, hit the beats of the original, oh, they found the ship from the first one, blah, blah, blah. Like that's, oh, they're on the Nostromo, like all that stuff. Like they would just hit those beats again. Whereas this is like, no, I'm just going to get really weird and only focus on the things that I'm interested in. And I don't care if anybody else cares about these things, which is really Scott, right? That's him.
I love that. It just feels like that would never fly these days. And it almost feels like the reaction to this film like directly led to Alien Covenant, which I don't want to get into too much. But like it seems like you totally changed course.
Yeah. Because I remember the sequel to this was supposed to be Paradise, and it was supposed to be like, okay, now we're gonna really get into the engineers. It's gonna be a movie about the engineers.
Right.
And they had no interest in that. They're like, we're calling it Alien. Come up with a title. It's strictly Alien. And
we need
they had like a brief flashback to the engineers. And I was just like, what the fuck? I wanted more Prometheus.
I have complicated feelings on Alien Covenant because I feel like it's a bad sequel to this movie, and it's not a great prequel to Alien either. So I don't like, there's stuff I like in it, but I agree. It feels very much studios leaning in heavy. And I like the way Ridley Scott receives it, because he's like, all right, fine. You want me to make an Alien movie? Let me just literally genocide off everything I set up in the last movie. All right, you want Alien? Fuck it. Everyone's dead. Everything you liked is gone. Here's your Alien movie, assholes. Like, that's how I feel his approach was to it. I could be reading into it more than there's really there, but I agree. It feels like he's very interested in something in this and doesn't really get to explore it any further. And then, of course, I don't think there was supposed to be a third installation in whatever it was they were making. With the Disney and all that, I don't think that's ever happening.
Yeah, and I think it was like critically, commercially not viable enough that Disney was gonna take a swing at Alien, because I think Covenant was one of the last few Fox movies before the acquisition.
Right. And it is interesting to know, I read about this today, that this really was something that he had wanted to make for quite some time. Like it was not as much of a studio comes to him thing as much as he came to the studio thing, because they had been like developing this since like the early 2000s. There was like some draft where it was him and James Cameron were working on it together, where like Cameron was going to write it and Scott was going to direct it. And it's like, I have no idea how those two guys would coexist in the same room, but it's like, fuck, you would love to see what those two mad scientists could cook up together, right? Like that would just be the most ambitious thing.
There was also that project with the guy from District 9 who was going to do the traditional Hollywood legacy sequel where he was going to bring back Sigourney Weaver, and that really seemed like that was going to happen. There was all this concept art and everything, and then that movie just
Covenant happened.
Yeah, so didn't happen.
And I did get kind of, even though I just got done saying like that would be the obvious way to go for a sequel, I was kind of disappointed that they didn't. It feels like Ridley Scott's stuff did prevent that full, because I think he even like protested it within the studio. He was like, if I'm going to make this, nobody else is doing Alien while I'm working on this, which is why also Cameron and Scott don't make this movie, 20 years ago, because James Cameron finds out they're making Alien versus Predator. And he says, you're going to completely void out the value of this world if you make this stupid movie. If you go through with it, I'm not making this movie. And they chose Paul W.S. Anderson over James Cameron and Ridley Scott. A no-brainer if you had to make it.
Imagine how that changes the course of just like movie making if James Cameron decides to make an Alien movie with Ridley Scott instead of potentially like starting work on Avatar and like all of that happening.
That's a good point. Yeah, they changed history forever.
That's a butterfly effect right there. But anyway, this movie, can we talk about how gorgeous this movie is? It is already like 8 or 9 years old and still just looks like $1 million. It looks so good. Like,
it looks incredible. Ridley Scott, the man always delivers in that front. Has every movie been narratively solid or delivered well? Not every single time, but the man knows how to compose an interesting shot. He knows how to find a cinematographer that he works really well with. Even going back, it's astounding to me even still. You go back to Blade Runner. It's like, what's that? A nearly 40-year-old movie, and like that. It's still, you can't even. How did he pull it off? Right, like the magic trick of just how beautiful these movies look. He has such a sense for where practicality can fit and where, digital effects are needed, and never leaning too heavily on those digital effects. Even in a movie where fuckers go to space and fight giant aliens and squid monsters, like somehow he sparingly used it. Even there was like a lot of practical locations. They're out there, climbing mountains to shoot the opening scenes of this film.
Yeah, I remember the like special feature video they released online. And they showed it was like a drone or something that they flew through like Iceland or something like that.
Yeah.
To capture that. And I was like, whoa, that's actually really sick.
Yeah. I had read that where they shot the scene where, the engineer falls down in the waterfall and, creates humanity. They had actually had to build roads just to get their crew to that location. There was no actual established way for people to go to that place, but they found it, I guess maybe through drones. I don't know, but they had to literally construct roads just to get there and shoot that one scene. This movie looks incredible. And it opens up with a Blue Fox logo. So, this shit's serious. This ain't no game. this ain't your mom's Fox movie.
It's your mama's Fox. No, this is a fucking man's Fox.
No, buckle up, kids. This is gonna get messed up. This is twisted. But the tone is something I really like about it too, because if you didn't know any better, like if you kind of just came in blind, and it's true, Jessica, as beautiful as it was, I still cringed and said, "What in the actual fuck? So gross." Oh yeah, this is a very gross movie too. Absolutely, and we'll get into that.
See, but that's the thing, right? Like that's the hook for me.
I've seen this movie so many times because each time I'm like, oh, I'm gonna figure out the connections, and I never do quite. I can piece it together each time, and then it just falls apart for me. Where I'm like, oh, so the engineers created human DNA, but the black ooze created this, and the worms created, and I'm just like, I don't fucking know what's going on, but I love it. But each time, the gross out parts, the broken arm, I remember every time I watch it, I've seen it so many times, but each time I'm like, oh fuck. And the eye scene, I have a real bad time with anything to do with eyes. And when he's looking in his eyes and a little thing comes out, I'm like, oh god damn it.
See, for whatever reason, I love horror movies, right? I watch a ton of horror movies. Most things in horror movies don't get me anymore. The genres that I feel have stuck with me the most, that scare me still the most, are body horror is at the top of the list. And I think that this film is a great body horror film. I think the cesarean section scene is for me an all-time. If you're going to talk about body horror scenes, I think that is all-time. If you had top 10 best body horror scenes, that I think that makes the list somewhere. The greatest. But I feel it makes the list somewhere. That scene is incredible.
I feel it really, the way the movie opens, it has this great sort of optimistic score. It sounds like something out of Star Trek instead of Alien. I actually had to make sure because I couldn't remember when he passed. I had to double check and make sure Jerry Goldsmith didn't do the score to this because it totally sounded like something in his wheelhouse where it's just got this grand sweeping orchestral score of oh, isn't this beautiful? Isn't this fascinating? Isn't this is what we dream of, right? It's got this great little motif that comes throughout, just totally concealing how gross and demented and how, but depending on your interpretation, potentially cynical the film is or nihilistic it is by the end. I feel you really see Ridley Scott working through a lot of stuff in this movie that he hasn't had the opportunity to do before. But I agree, it has this great opening, and of course, the way the opening title of Prometheus itself comes in, very referential, harkens back.
That's something I want to talk about. Would you ever go on some exploratory space mission in a ship that has as ominous ominous of a name as fucking Prometheus, like I'm not getting on that ship. Like if you name your ship like Icarus or Prometheus or like something like that, like I'm not getting on that fucking ship. I'm sorry, like that's just got bad vibes. Like I don't.
Yeah, it's that great Wayland, like old man trillionaire capitalist hubris of like, we literally are embodying, a Greek myth as we take to the stars. We are right there in the shoes of a god, making the same feats and journey. And I mean, it's got to be said, I can absolutely see a number of members of the human race doing exactly what Wayland is doing in this movie. Yeah, it's like this.
I hope Jeff Bezos meets the same fate as Wayland.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's part of what the mission to Mars is. But yeah, as many themes as there are in this movie, I think there are a ton. I do think it has that sort of anti-capitalist streak in it that Aliens, I think, also touches down on, because essentially what this movie is about from the humans' perspective is it's all about just some rich asshole that doesn't want to die. Like when it comes down to it, like that is all that this movie is about. And all these people and the world itself almost suffers because of one guy's selfish pursuit.
Yeah, one man's journey to never die almost damns the entire human race in the process. And it's true, because that's the spirit of pretty much all these alien movies is, corporate exploitation of the working class as a means to an end, right? Like and you get to see more of Wayland in this than you ever do up front in the original Alien movies, where they're just kind of this weird, shadowy organization who's got like a mission, but you're never really privy to it. And, in the later films, all they want to do is capture the xenomorph, never really elaborated too heavily onto why. I guess, use them as a weapon. It's just such a terrible idea. It's like, I feel like missiles are much better than xenomorphs. If you need to use, I don't know what you're gonna do with these guys. That's gonna really be worth.
Do you know that their blood is acid? Have you heard that part?
Yeah, that's the meaning. They're like, these guys got mouths in their mouths, and they're gonna eat you with them. It's like, oh, we got guns though. Like, I don't know, we're spending trillions of dollars and going across the galaxy to get these little bug things. Like, we could just nuke them from space. You seen the shit we were developing, Wayland? He's like, no, we need to get those bugs. Get those bugs. I don't know. It's always the message, right? Though, is the corporate.
It's something that you brought up that I think is really funny is that the target in most of the other films, right? You mentioned that like it's blue collar people. It's people that are like literally space towmen. And then like there's a prison planet full of people, and like none of these people are people of means, but the people in this film are all intellectuals and scientists. And I wonder if there's a part of old man Ridley Scott that's like, no, like these are the people that are of. I don't know if there's a political message in there, but I do think it's interesting that the target of who is responsible and what their motives are has sort of changed, because Shaw is totally culpable, and as well as what's his name?
Greenlee?
Holloway,
yes, Holloway. Shaw and Holloway and Holloway is like arguably the dumbest character in the film. Like, but he's supposed to be the scientist that's like leading this expedition. And he's one of the most like reckless.
Reckless, like taking his helmet off, like before they've like fully understood like the atmosphere. He's like, "Fuck it, I'm doing it."
There's a lot of exchanges about taking helmets off and putting them back on. Like I really noticed it this time around. I was like, damn, they were always talking about those helmets, which I remember was like a huge point of contention when this came out, where people were like, oh, they're supposed to be scientists, but they're just so stupid. Which I don't know. I don't really feel that way. I don't really feel that way as like a grand statement on all. I think they all have their own personal faults and insecurities that show through their actions in the movies. But I don't think broad strokes like, oh, they're supposed to be smart and they're all stupid.
I mean, I think they're just trying to say science is reckless. I mean, science got us like the atom bomb and all this shit. Like ultimately, science is reckless. and I think that's what Ridley maybe was trying to show. So,
Well,
I mean, they traveled to this planet and then ultimately almost destroyed humanity.
There is even a little inherent ego in everybody's. Mostly, because some people don't even. That's something else I didn't pick up on until this time. I was like, oh, some of these people literally signed up for a mission in which they go cryo sleep for years, jettisoned across the galaxy, and they don't even find out why they did that until they wake up and get in the conference room. Like, imagine that. Like, imagine just giving away years of your life in exchange for a mission you don't even understand until you're there to do it. It's like, holy shit. So I feel like there's I feel like there's still some sort of inherent like exploitation of smaller people in that you could
like the dude from Mission Impossible, the bad guy from Mission Impossible, he's like,
Sean Harris.
Like, all I know is rocks, and I don't see any fucking rocks here, just a big ass head, so I'm gonna get the fuck out of here. Dude, what are you doing here then?
And that's something that I like remember about the marketing of the film, like specifically about him. I watched like the little short about him and that he had been on multiple deep space missions, and that he was like, his character was supposed to be like a little crazy, like he was like a little wacky, and that's why he's like smoking weed in his spacesuit. Like he's so wild. And I think one of the big things about this movie that it was criticized about it is that some of the supporting characters are like pretty thin, and I would say that they're no more thin than any film like this, like in this sort of genre. I would say that obviously they tried to circumvent that criticism by creating like this multimedia campaign with all these different little shorts about the characters, because maybe they knew that some of the characterization was a little thin. But to me, that ultimately doesn't make the film suffer that much, because for me, like the characters that I think that are really well written are are Shaw and David. I think are make up for the rest of the cast, and then even and I want to shout them out and talk about them at some point. Idris Elba and Charlize Theron are also like doing their best work in this movie. So so there are at least 4 characters that I care about. I think that's successful. I don't know.
And I would say, like, well, I guess with Fassbender, like for such big names, they are so firmly placed in the supporting cast too. So much so that I truly had forgotten Idris Elba was in this, because it'd been a couple of years since I'd watched it. I remembered Charlize, but I'd fully forgotten he was even in this. So like that was a pleasant surprise. And that he's just kind of the pilot guy. He's kind of the moral barometer for the crew too. By the time the movie's over, he's like kind of I feel like your empathy entry point, where it's like that's like the only guy who's ever really making any sense or like thinking practically about things, or like seems to care, puts a Christmas tree up in the lobby, like seems like a pretty chill guy. Everybody else is like super into what they've got going on and like super high tension and just like really neurotic. But I guess that's, you'd almost have to be. These are scientists who have left their galaxy to find extraterrestrial life, so they're all really into what they've got going on. And you mentioned David. I feel like we could go on for an hour in itself about
so fucking crazy.
David. It really doesn't feel that crazy that he basically ends up being the protagonist.
I want to talk about like him a lot, but I want to start with Fassbender and that.
Yeah.
So I was convinced after watching First Class in 2011 and then this movie in 2012, I was like, oh, Michael Fassbender is going to be the biggest movie star on the planet. I was like, this guy is going to be the biggest movie star on the planet. Everybody is going to know this guy. And it's wild how he did not capitalize on that.
Not at all.
Like,
I mean, he did do Snowman.
It's honestly baffling.
He did do Snowman,
which
is Snowman, which is quite a banger.
Talk about that one on here.
Yeah, banger of a movie.
He was Detective Harry Hole. We must stand. That's a great point, though. He's had a weird kind of back and forth career where it's like, aside from being Magneto for a few years, and I'm pretty sure that part of his career is over, he really doesn't have like any of those big tentpole roles. Like he makes weird choices and risks, like Assassin's Creed. He'll show up in like a random drama, like Steve Jobs. Didn't really, I think, take the way they thought it would. Like,
I do like that. I do really like that movie, but it wasn't. I don't think it was the big movie that they thought.
Yeah, that's a great point. He doesn't really.
I think that suffered from like the Sony leaks and all the like background drama with like David Fincher was supposed to do it with who was supposed to be.
Well,
I can't remember who was supposed to be Steve Jobs, but like there was so much shit going on with David Fincher in that movie and Cleopatra. It was like a mess, and that I think that hurt Steve Jobs ultimately.
No, there was definitely, and then the fact that there was that like cheapo version that Ashton Kutcher was in like around the same time. Yeah,
not great. No, I agree. He's got a very interesting career in that he's not become that leading man blockbuster actor still. I mean, you would think obviously he's got a big part in the X-Men movies, but like those ones are very ensemble, and sometimes he's a bigger focus and sometimes he's not. But it never feels like Fassbender's presence is like what they're ever going to try to sell a movie on, right? Like, But I agree. Coming out of this, he's like almost the whole damn show in this. Like that, he's just so. His characterization is great. Like he's the most interesting too, just from a writing standpoint. But like, you just want to figure him out more and more as the movie goes on. Like he really is the hook. That's the other thing that's always consistent with alien movies. Like, yeah, the aliens are pretty bad, but you know what really sucks? Androids. Those guys are the worst. They're always fucking things up in these movies. Yeah. Which feels like another thing that Ridley Scott's very interested in is synthetic life. That's like that seems like the hook he's been on from this movie to right now. Like, obviously it's still present in the sequel to this. Like he produces the new Blade Runner. What was that show he had?
Fucking Raised by Wolves. Yeah, God, that show's very bad.
I have never watched any of it, I'll confess, but that seems to be the same hook. Was it's very much about synthetic life.
Yes.
So you feel like he's got a lot of ideas and anxieties about that, since that rings through all sorts of his sci-fi work, and maybe never truer than this, because Jess mentioned it earlier, he's basically the linchpin that makes everything fall apart in this. But yeah, Fassbender's performance it's so layered and so nuanced and so compelling, in that he has to be very emotionless and cold, as he is an android, and yet because of that, you're so, at least I can say, I'm so frequently trying to figure out like what is going through his head in every single scene, trying to figure out what his motive is. The whole movie, that's like the real roller coaster for me. David, he's the best. He's the best part of the movie, I think.
Yeah, and I think we could talk about like his motivations a little bit. So like, there's a part of him obviously that I think is trying to carry out Wayland's mission, but there's also, there's this just jealousy that he has, I think, inherently for humans. There's an ego at play that like, oh, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you. And I think that drives a lot of the decisions. And then, as I think Jess said in the chat, there's just an inherent curiosity about what were these, like he shows up at this planet and sees what he kind of gets what was happening very quickly and decides like, oh, these guys wanted to take out humans because they probably realized the same thing that I've realized about them, which is that they kind of suck and they're not that smart. And, like it's
there's that whole like exchange with him and Holloway where like he asks Holloway why he thinks like humans made him. And he was like, because we can. And he's like, think about your disappointment if you meet your engineers and they tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think that like kind of like gives you an idea of like what his ultimate motives are. Is, he's doing this because he can.
Well, and also you think of the mission they're on, where it's like, we're going to, fly across the stars and meet our makers, and what a like grand celestial, impactful experience that's going to be. It's going to be so amazing when we meet them. But for him, he's like, oh, I know who my creators were from the second I got booted up. I've always known, I've already met them. And as I get to know them more, I'm becoming increasingly disappointed in them. Like, imagine meeting your maker and thinking, oh, this guy's an asshole. Like that's the journey he's on, which I think is a great parallel to what they're doing. And I feel like he's losing his faith more and more in his makers. And he's seeing his own journey as he's like superseding them and becoming better than them, to where he's like, yeah, you know what? I think I'll just fuck around up here and see what happens. Like, I think maybe I can reverse the roles. You know, I'm already more ahead of the curve than these guys are. Let me just experiment on these people and see what comes out of it. You know, I like you said, Connor, he can do it because he could. So he's like, I guess I just will. I can. So I guess I just will. And we'll see what happens. See where the chips fall. You know?
Yeah. It's almost like he's deciding he's kind of realized that he can create life, you know, like that. And, you know, I think that there are, so along with, we talked about like the capitalist ideas in this movie, I think there's also a lot of religion in this film.
Oh yeah.
And
sure.
I think that's a topic that Lindelof is obsessed with.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Not just religion, but the idea of faith and mystery and not understanding and believing anyway. And Shaw is like a classic Lindelof character in that way. She is the believer, and I think it's one of the things that sort of makes her a much different character than Ripley. Is that she's sort of this idealist and this believer, and she's a true believer. At the same time, what's really interesting about her is that she wears a cross and she talks about believing in Jesus, but she's literally on a mission to meet her maker. And so one thing that's really interesting to me about like a religious symbology in the film that I think is really cool and sort of like a callback to maybe movies like, I don't know, like Rosemary's Baby or like any sort of like Antichrist film, is that when Shaw wakes up after Holloway is burned to death, and she wakes up, and the first thing that happens is that David tries to take her cross away from her, and he says, "Oh, it might be contaminated, and we need to take that away from you." And he's right as he's about to tell her that she's been impregnated with this creature, right? This antichrist essentially like creature that she has. I think also in the film they mention how Shaw isn't able to get pregnant, and now she has this like immaculate conception. So there's these like very large like religious overtones, which I was talking earlier about films, things in horror that are left that still scare me. Which I said body horror is one. Another thing is like I am still into the like demonic, satanic type shit, and I think that there's those overtones in this film as well. You know.
Yeah, and I think I think it finds itself at a very comfortable balance between, you know, making those statements but doing it in a way that's subtle enough that it leaves enough on the table for you to interpret. I had read about a scene. I don't know if they shot it, but I read about something that Ridley Scott originally wanted to include, which was this implication that an engineer at some point had gone back to Earth to like check in and see what was happening. And there would be either a scene or some implication that they crucified him once he got there. So to say that Jesus literally was also an engineer. And I was like, whoever said don't do that, great note, because that would have been chaos.
A little too on the nose. That
yeah, that felt, you know, you could keep it a little more subtle than that, something that literal. No, I agree. I feel like Ridley Scott is playing with such grand concepts that you really need someone who, I mean, like the ambitious characters in this movie, has to be a little full of themselves to confront, you know, because I feel like those are very intimidating ideas and very difficult to play with them in a way that comes across as intellectual and not juvenile. Like I would say, you know, crucifying an alien, that would have been a little silly, but they play with it in a way that I think is subtle enough and has this layer of sophistication across everything that's really trying to do. I really think this is a great classic example of like what sci-fi can be and what it can achieve.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously it has its fun with the horror scenes, you know, that's what brings this show to it at the end of the day, is some of the horror elements of it. But when it wants to take its time and sit in its sci-fi ideas, I think it does a really solid, great job. That now when I revisit it and I don't have this alien expectation on it so heavily, I've enjoyed it way more in subsequent watches, where at the time I was like, whoa, there's no xenomorph in it, what the fuck, where's the chest burster? Like, yeah.
But if we want to talk about like the horrific elements, there's the scene where the engineer's head blows up, which is fucking awesome. Yeah, practical, and it looks like a practical effect, which is just awesome. Like it just looks great. Such a cool moment. And then there's the C-section scene, which is just, we've already kind of touched on it. It's so good. It's so scary. It's also like, look, I talked about like all the themes of this film. I think there's a feminist edge to this movie as well. Like Shaw wants to get this abortion, and everyone on the crew is trying to make her keep this baby between David and the medical staff. They're like, she literally has to beat somebody off with a fire hydrant to like go and get this demon seed taken out of her. But that scene is so scary, and it's such a like updated version. So like every Alien movie since the first one has done the chest burst scene. Like we've seen it in every single one since the first one. This was a way to like subvert that iconography in a different way that is so like different and cool. Like it's such a great scene.
Yeah, I agree. It never, and to its benefit, it never feels like it's just flat out playing the hits. Like it really is figuring out what its own iconography is going to be, creating the most fascinating scenes that lend themselves to this story, and not just trying to do another Alien movie, which was at its own sort of demise when it came out, but I think also is an element that is treated with much more kindness in the years that have followed. I think even especially just compared to the sequel to this movie, I think more people lean in favor of this in contrast to that, which was probably what a lot of people wanted to get when this movie first came out, which was, me included, Ridley Scott doing more Alien. So I agree. It finds its horror, and it finds the same feelings that the original film could give you, and those body horror elements and the violence and the gore, but delivering it in a new way to this film, where it also feels like you really are like tracking the journey of this organism that lives at the center of these movies. It really doesn't even get close to resembling it till the very end, which is, I think, fun, because obviously Covenant, that's a very xenomorph movie. You get to see like the weird little white ones for a little bit, but by the end it's just classic wet boy trying to bash his way into the ship.
Which is the best part of that sequel, is the very pissed off xenomorph smashing his head.
We do love that one. No one's ever been angrier than that xenomorph ever.
I love the awkward little like teenage looking xenomorph that we have in this one, like the little Charmeleon version of the xenomorph that we have.
Yeah, comes out all whole and shit. He's just
he's like awkward and gangly. He's like.
And it's like I kind of want to track his journey. Like we never see that guy again,
what's his like teenage years like? What's he doing?
We have those movies on the show sometimes where we go, man, I just want to know what the next day is. It's like always a fun question in horror. I want to know what his next day is. Like I just want to know where does he go after that? Who's he hanging out with? He's all alone up there.
I wanted to bring up two more things. I just wanted to say, Charlize Theron and Idris Elba, the chemistry between them in this movie is popping. Their scenes, they have brief scenes together, but I really think that they were working well together. Listen, this is something that I've never publicly stated before. I'm not the biggest Idris Elba fan. I like Idris Elba when he's doing his natural accent. When he's doing the American accent, to me, I always get hung up on the fact that it's like a fake accent, and it really takes me out of. And I know there are a lot of British actors that do fake accents, but for whatever reason, him and Benedict Cumberbatch, their American accents really just bring me out of the movie really badly. But this is maybe my favorite Idris Elba movie. And he doesn't have that big of a role in it, but I think he's great. For whatever reason, it's like 2093, but my guy's like still real into Steven Stills for some reason, and keeps singing a song that came out like 100 years before he was born, which isn't impossible. But of all the music that is going to transcend in 80 years from now, I don't know if Steven Stills is gonna still be hanging around, but maybe, who knows? But yeah, I just love that. And then I just want to make sure that I don't miss anything. That
well, I mean, Covenant was like took place like what, like 10 years later, and they're singing John Denver.
They're singing John Denver. It's weird.
That's true. Yeah, I didn't think of that old country. That was like the year where like 5 movies came out with country roads in the soundtrack, and like not even in the soundtrack, but like literal characters taking time to sing the song throughout the film. Big year for Denver. And also I want to make sure, because it came up while we were talking about it. Jess loves the last conversation that David and Elizabeth had at the end. We know that David is this know-it-all throughout the film. He still can't comprehend why she wants to understand why they want to destroy humans, as she tells him he can't understand because she is human and he is not. That is because he lacks the same kind of, even though he's got the intrigue, he lacks the empathy and he lacks the emotion, I guess, to feel insulted or, let down. Like there is kind of that, again, that human ego thing of like, well, no, what, you're talking shit. What, why? I want to find out. Like, you're going to blow our whole planet up. Tell me more about this. I'm kind of upset with David. Just like, whatever, dude, they were going to do it. Now they're not. Like, it's cool. And also Shug in the chat, going to leak the receipts on Nick not liking Idris Elba or Benedict Cumberbatch, saying you were not going to go see Spider-Man. Is that true?
I'm not seeing Spider-Man because Spider from Goodfellas is not, apparently he's not in it. They're getting all the other Spider-Men, but they're not getting my Spider.
If they don't play hero in that movie, it's a dog shit movie.
Yeah, if Chad Kroger and the guy from Saliva don't show up.
Yeah, if that song doesn't play when like all 3 Spider-Men show up, I'm out. I'm gonna be like, well, this movie was a waste of 2 hours and 40 minutes. I'm fucking out. This sucks.
Can we talk? I want to talk about flaws of this movie. I don't really have many. I just got one.
Sure.
Guy Pearce. Why? Why is Guy Pearce playing this role? Why did we not get an actual old man? Why did we get Guy Pearce? And I think the reason why is that they did these multimedia like things, and they had Guy Pearce playing like a young Wayland and some of the stuff, and like it was supposed to tie in, but like what? No, we just didn't need it.
Yeah, they also had like a 3-movie plan, and he was going to be featured throughout because it was going to like call back to like younger Wayland, and they wanted to keep him on, so they were like, coming on this one, you'll be in all 3.
They do that in Covenant, right? It opens up in a flashback with him and David, and he's a young man, which puts into perspective how goddamn long David's been hanging out with this old son of a bitch.
Yeah, that's probably why he's so fucking pissed off and just like bored with humanity. He's like, dude, I have to fucking serve this dude tea all the time for the last 80 years. Like,
and that Wayland dude was just waxing poetic. That guy was monologue every morning. Like, let me tell you what I have to say about everything that's ever happened, right? Like, that's a lot of toxicity to build up. Yeah.
You're a robot and you can't fucking play the piano.
Yeah, they should have let David go on like what do the Amish people do? They get to go on like a little trip into town.
Rumspringa.
Yeah, David should have had a Rumspringa. You could have seen how cool he could have went to like a pizza parlor. I don't know. He could have like done something fun.
Yeah, that's the movie I want to see. David enjoying Fazoli's for the first time.
Yeah, he could have gone to Dave & Buster's. I don't know. Yeah. He could go to like, gone on a roller coaster. I don't know. He could have done a lot of different things. Could have gone in a different way.
Horror icon Patrick Wilson is also in this film.
Blink and you miss it. I definitely forgot about that.
Wrote that down because I'm like, Schmoedown, baby. You need to Patrick Wilson, remembering that one.
Yeah, and he dies from Ebola.
Yeah.
That'll be the Schmoedown.
Apparently, that's still fucking raging on in like 2040. It'd be later. It would have been like 2050.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Something else I wrote down while watching this was this is probably true for so many things. It's probably almost a cliche to say it, but man, some shit definitely hits different watching this movie from a post-pandemic perspective. Like Vickers of the flamethrower, I was like, it doesn't feel that villainous anymore.
No, it doesn't seem that dramatic in these.
Also,
in these
doesn't
days.
seem though that many people would care. Like she'd probably be like, "Yeah, he could come on the ship. It doesn't matter. You don't have to vaccinate him."
Yeah. Knowing like her background, she'd be like, "Yeah, fuck it, bring him on."
Bring him on.
She's more ahead of the curve than more ahead of the curve than the contemporary contemporary right.
Letting the contaminated spaceman back on the ship to own the libs.
Yeah, because that's what I was watching. I was like, don't bring him out. Like, I wonder if when this movie first came out, I was like, yeah, get him on board. We got to save him. Now I'm like, absolutely don't bring him on. Sorry. Like, yeah, fucking torch him. I mean, he knows it. He gets it. He's like, you got to take me out.
To be fair,
I'm bad news.
This movie sort of has the same problem that I think and I'm sure someone who's a big Star Wars fan is going to tell me why I'm wrong here, but has the same problem that the Star Wars prequels have, where it's like the tech like is just wildly different than the Alien films.
Yeah, you had like DOS system like computers in the first one, and then you got like touchscreen like holographic ones in this one, and I'm like, well, so they went backwards.
Yeah, and there's a scene in
like, you know what? Fuck the touchscreens. Bring back DOS.
I made a note and I'm sure there's like some in-universe explanation, like, well, the ship that Ripley and them are on is very old and it's old tech. Yeah. But I made a note of the one scene in particular that I thought, well, this is weird. There's the scene where Wayland is like he's a hologram and he's giving them like the pitch of why they're there and like the conference room and like what they're doing. And they all seem really wowed by that. They're like, wow, like he's right here in the room with us. Like, wow. And just based on all the other tech that they have, I'm like, hologram? Like we're all blown away by the hologram. Like not the space, not the fact that we just like went like a couple years
into another galaxy.
Yeah, into another galaxy. Like we're all like befuddled that some guy left like a video message after like he left the Randy message in Scream 2. Like why are we so blown away by this? But that was
Scream 3. That's Scream 3.
Scream 3. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's true. They take a nap, woke up in a different galaxy. A robot read their dreams for entertainment on the way there. And now they're about to go on a planet where humanity was like conceived as an idea. And they're like,
whoa, a hologram.
Cool graphics. So real.
Yeah.
You're sitting in the same room as a humanoid like robot and you're so befuddled by a hologram.
Yeah, that's true. David is like a miracle in himself as well. But that's also a point. Wayland is a trillionaire. He literally says he spends $1 trillion on this journey. Yeah. And I think it's true, Nick. I don't know if Ridley Scott had said this, but somewhere along the way, someone did say, well, yeah, we know there's a discrepancy in the tech between this and Alien, but like you should just think of the Nostromo as being some old rundown piece of garbage. And they didn't give these expendable, peons any money and let them use a bunch of old tech. I don't know. Yeah, it's we all kind of know why it is the way it is because that movie was made in the 70s and this is made in 2012 and they didn't want to be
I totally hear you.
I totally hear you. I'll tell you what kind of technology I do like in this. Using a flute to drive your ship, that rules.
Yeah.
That's what I wrote down. I like the flute. That's good.
Yeah, imagine just being like no good at, like some people they can't make the noise with the reed and they just can't do it. They can't drive. Like
the ship just nosedives. They're like, oh fuck.
I love it. These engineer guys, they seem very utilitarian. You don't really get any like read on what their culture is or anything like that in this movie, but somewhere along the way somebody said
Squidward.
Yeah, buff Squidward. But somewhere along the way someone said you gotta play the flute to drive the ship, and that guy was a lot of fun. So I think there's something going on with these guys where they have a little fun somewhere along the way.
They may be homicidal maniacs trying to come up with chemical weapons, but
they do seem like pranksters because in the very beginning you see the ship come down, and then that engineer is already on the ground when the like other ship is coming down, and it's as if they just wanted to watch him like drink this goo. They're like, check it out, I made this guy drink this goo, watch what's gonna happen. And then he dissolves and they're like, fucking idiot, and then they just take off. Like, they're definitely pranksters. Like, they were like, yeah, fucking Kevin's gonna drink this shit, and he has no idea what's gonna happen.
I love that they remain kind of like imperceivable. We got a double Nick Harley. What happened here? Hold on. Let's see what happened. We got him?
Hey, I'm back. Yeah.
It's so weird. It's so weird. No one, this will translate to StreamYard at all, but like the other you is still backstage frozen. This is so weird. I wonder if we could get both. Hold on. Let's see. Oh no, it just shows black. I thought that'd be amazing.
If it just had two Nick Harleys on here.
Yeah, like parallel universe me shows up. Now you got a really scary episode.
It's so weird. I've never seen it do that before. I wonder when he'll go away. What were we talking about? The flutes. We were talking about playing the flute. I love that. And that comes back in Covenant. I didn't even think of it, but there's a whole scene where he teaches another android to play the flute. This dude gets so hooked on playing flutes after this moment.
I guess we didn't get into the space jockey and what we think.
Yeah.
Like, was that anything that you paid specific attention to? Like, was that a question? Because this is one of those things that I wonder about. Like, you can talk about prequel movies. Did they explain too much? Like, did we need to know where the xenomorph came from? Did we need to know the origin of the space jockey? I would say in this case that these aren't egregious to me. These aren't like over explaining. But I will say how cool. Like, it was a cool detail in the original film, right? Just like a cool thing that was in there that you were like, whoa, what the fuck is that? But it's not something that I ever lingered on. And then to see it come back in this movie with such a like cool callback, it's very, very interesting that that's what he kind of latched onto.
And we don't really get the answers either. We still don't know who that space jockey was, how they got there.
Right, the one in Alien, because it doesn't quite. I remember watching it the first time. I thought they were gonna do the very cutesy thing where they go and ta-da, here's the guy from Alien, but obviously very pointedly does not get to the planet because we see what happens to him. He doesn't get to that moon where the xenomorphs happen and all that from the first.
Yeah, movie. Even in Covenant, we don't get there.
Yeah, so he doesn't do that. Maybe that's where they were going in part 3. Maybe they're going to do that perfect lead in or not. I don't know, but they do resist in this.
It's also.
Oh no! We lost him again. I think. Oh no!
What's up there,
Nick? If you can hear us, we lost you again. I'm so sorry. Just join back in. This time, if he comes back in, I'm going to leave this one on the screen and see what happens. And see if we achieve a singularity. And see if everything is undone. But as he was saying, as we all were saying, I remember, I feel like the fan base of these movies was kind of stuck on the space jockey, and that Nick moved for a little bit. We might be getting you back, Nick. I still don't hear you. Just make a noise if you hear us, so we'll let you know if we heard it. The magic of StreamYard and live shows. This is what can always happen.
I'm sorry, guys.
Oh, I heard you for a second. Oh, now he's all black. All right, well, I'll leave him like this. Maybe he'll come back. Nick, we heard you for a second, but we lost you again. Oh, here he comes. Here he comes. We get him back. There he is.
I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry about this, guys.
That's all right. That's the glory of StreamYard sometimes.
Live TV, baby.
Exactly. No, the space jockey stuff, I remember it always being a compelling element. Like, it's very compelling visually. It's like, oh, yes, they found alien eggs. But by the way, there was like a dead giant in the same room. We just never revisited that subject. And I think visually it is so interesting that I feel like the fandom was kind of caught on that detail for years because it was something that all the sequels never revisited. It seemed like that was like kept on the shelf. That was like Ridley Scott's thing. I'm sure maybe the comic books or the novels or the video games probably play with it, but like Ridley Scott's not worried about that shit. Ridley Scott's not worried about anything except the movies he's made, as far as I'm concerned, right? Like he certainly isn't interested in AVP because he's immediately right that out of continuity just by the first scene. But I feel like that was that detail that was like it was almost too big for anybody else to try to touch. So like for him to finally come back and say more about it, I think I would like to think was probably pretty fulfilling for Alien fans at the time. Again, I was caught up in my xenomorph bullshit, but if you were like really into these movies, I feel like him coming back and looking at that imagery and expanding on it, I feel like that was a pretty big deal. And like you said, Nick, a cool way to link back to the movies without it being super heavy-handed.
Mm-hmm.
See, I never got caught up on the xenomorph stuff. I was caught up and still am on like connecting the dots.
Yeah.
Like how, like what made what? Because you got the engineers and they like drink the black goo and then they break down and it's like implied they created human DNA. Then you see the dick worms.
Dick worms.
And then it's implied that they create something.
So I think the goo, the way that I see it is that the goo is some sort of biological weapon that sort of alters, does something to alter DNA. And
yes,
and in the case of combining that weapon, and so it's
human, you get squid.
Yeah, so I feel like the like you combine that with like a human embryo, yeah, and you get this sort of squid thing that then if you combine that with the engineer's DNA, then you get this you get the prototype xenomorph, the weird gangly.
And that brings me back to why did they have a mural of a xenomorph in their lair?
Well, I think what it's meant to do is that it's like that goo or whatever is meant to go to Earth, infect the people, and then create these beasts that are like going to wipe everybody else out.
There is something interesting in that. I mean, Idris Elba's character just sort of decides, like he deduces on the way. He's the one who actually says it out loud. Oh, the goo's a bioweapon. Like he figures that out on his own. So it is, if that is in fact what that stuff is supposed to be, which seems like it is because they're going to go drop it on our heads at the end. It's interesting that it's the same stuff that they're going to destroy us with. Apparently also was responsible for our creation. And then that it invents bioweapons. And when one of them snorted it on Earth, it made us. So it's like there's some weird relationship between us and the xenomorphs, which we think as these very practical, like there's no empathy or there's no culture to the xenomorph. It's just like endless spread and destruction and infestation, and then like here we are and we're like born of the same product with the same sort of like wanton experimentation that got us there. Oh fuck it, we'll see what happens. Snort it, jump in the river, and we'll see what happens. And then Covenant, David's like, I don't know, I'll pour some of this out in there, we'll see what happens. Like the same recklessness seems to inform both forms of like intelligent design, which again feels like maybe Ridley Scott's working through something there, or perhaps that speaks to what he sees humanity as. Even if there is some sort of intelligent design, it's maybe not as divine as we've worked it up as our minds and hearts over the years to be. That maybe it is just some weird science experiment, and the guy who did it's not even paying attention anymore. And if he found out what we were doing, he'd go, oh god, fucking carpet bomb and start over, because this is a bummer. There's a lot of interesting stuff. It's a lot of questions which I think the movie doesn't also care to answer. Like something I think is interesting about it is that there are no grand sweeping expository scenes. You are left at the end going like, wait, how does that connect to that? And like, what is the implication of this? Because there is no part where somebody sits down and goes, okay, I understand everything. Let me tell the characters what's going on. Like that never happens.
About it though, I think I have a little bit more grasp on it. I think they were trying to make more of the engineers, because they did get like wiped out on that planet, and they went to Earth to try to make more of them, and then ended up getting wiped out. And that's why when like they're confronting the one that lived on that planet, you ultimately was disappointed that the plan didn't work, and he fucking tears David's head off and fucking punts Waylon. And it's like he's just punting everybody. He's like, god damn it, the plan didn't work, punt everybody, rip heads off. Fuck
that's an interesting scene, and it depends on what cut of the movie that you watch. because there is in the extended cut of the film, Wayland gives a little speech to the engineer before he decides to punt him. He goes on a speech about how he tells the engineer what he's there to do. And he makes sure that David tells him. And he says, I'm looking to live forever. Yeah. He explains that God shouldn't die. And he's like, just like you created us, I created David. And, gods don't deserve to die. And the way that I kind of interpret this scene, and I think it's a really interesting way of like sort of, I was talking about this with somebody else when I discussed like that I was going to be going on this thing. They described it as like it's like a monk. If a monkey went up to a human and was like, "Look, I made this scarecrow, so you and I are the same." Like just like you know what I mean? Like it's sort of like I made this scarecrow, so you and I were exactly the same, and us being like, well, no, and the way the engineer gets to say that is like he takes the scarecrow and rips its head off and is like, no, this isn't anything like what we are capable of creating.
If we'd be so insulted that we then proceed to kick the monkey's ass across the room just for trying to talk to us about it. Fuck out of here, monkey. Matter of fact, I'm taking out every monkey in the universe.
Yeah. Fuck
yeah. Fucking
because
monkey.
Of your hubris, monkey.
I do also love that, Wayland tells Dave, they finally get him down there and he tells David, like, translate what I'm saying because he can understand you. And we have no idea what David actually says to the engineer on this. There's no subtitle. There's you can't really read the engineer because he gives David this sort of caressing look. Like he's almost like he's trying to figure out, like he's reading David. Maybe he translated.
I think I know what David said.
Yeah, what'd he say?
He said, we're on this planet and I don't know why there's so much ligma here.
And yes, the engineer's very quietly.
The engineer was like, I know this joke and you're a fucking idiot.
Oh, he just didn't fall for it.
Yeah, he was like, I'm not falling for it. And then just ripped his head off. He's like, I've heard that for the last millennia. It's not going to fly.
Just like we invented humans, we invented that joke.
You want to talk balls? Wait till you see what I got under this suit. You little scarecrow son of a bitch. You see the rest of me. Where do you think you got it from, kid? Yeah, but I love it. You don't know what he said because it's like you could read it either way. He could have given a perfect interpretation of what Wayland said, and the engineer could have said, "How dare you!" Like just even suggesting that is so insulting. I'm going to kick all your asses and kill everybody. Or David could have done as we've seen him do all throughout the movie and goes, I'm going to tweak the script and just see what happens. What happens is he gets his head ripped off like it's nothing, which is great. I love we get some android violence because that's great in the original, like that milky blood.
And he immediately is back on Team Shaw. He's like, you know what, baby? I'm sorry. I apologize. Remember that part? Remember when I was going to make you give birth to an alien baby? I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. My head's over here, by the way.
He's like, who else are you going to talk? Like, that really becomes his argument at the end. He's like, well, you can't do worse than this. You can't do better either. We may as well become friends now. He's like, fuck, you're right.
Like, yeah, I'm your only way off this planet, so pick up my head, drag my body. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we can't not talk, coming out of this scene. I feel like it's the biggest. You get Idris Elba and the pilots. They very quickly and nobly decide to sacrifice themselves to save humanity, which you got to appreciate. Very no nonsense. Like there's no follow-up question. She's like, we got to kill that ship or else everybody's dead. And she's just like, oh shit. All right. I'm going to kamikaze that thing.
And the other two guys who have gotten, the one guy gets pretty much no lines throughout the whole film is just like,
forgot he was there.
We're doing it.
Sure. I'll die too. Yeah, we'll all die together. And then you have what I think is definitely when this came out, the biggest point of criticism that I still see people give this movie grief for. All that recently, Ridley Scott's been all in the Twitters lately because he said he was the next old guy to say he didn't like Marvel movies. And I saw everybody trying to dunk on him for the scene in Prometheus where the lady runs straight instead of sideways when the ship is falling down after her. I feel like we got to talk about that scene. Does that still bother you at all, or did it ever?
I don't think it ever did bother me.
Yeah,
it's a big ship. I don't know.
It never bothered me.
Bothers me more in Game of Thrones when Rickon Stark just runs straight. But
because my point is, it's easy when you're not in the situation to be like, well, I'm gonna run sideways,
and it is what
out of the way.
And it's not like they didn't think of that, because Shaw is the one who does that and survives. Yeah. I forgot she falls down and rolls to the side and survives. And not the most ingenious move in the world, but it's not like they didn't think of that. And it's just the one character who didn't do it gets squished.
And was obviously panicking. Like, you just watched all this shit go down. You're not really in the right mind to be like the most tactical person. Like, you're panicking. A giant ship is about to fall on you. What do I do? I'm going to try to outrun it. Like that.
It's not that long of a scene. Like, she starts to try to outrun it. She looks up at it, sort of realizes that she is not is going to get crushed. She panics. She trips and falls, and then by the time she's turning over, she's going to get crushed. Like, she just realizes that she's done. It's just all panic. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't think it's that egregious of a scene.
Yeah, I never understood that argument for movies. Like, well, this character, unless it's like something so stupid, like someone running into a knife. Like, why'd you run into a knife? It's just like, sometimes people do stupid stuff. Like, a normal human will look back on their lives and be like, well, I would have done that differently. Obviously, because like you're past it now, but like, I just never understood that criticism for like stuff like that.
The one stupid thing is the biology guy who's just like, oh, cute alien snake.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm going to touch it. Like that. Come on.
That is very fucking stupid.
That was very stupid. But it's also like, come on, it's a horror movie. People act dumb in horror movies sometimes because they got to die. They act dumb, and then their penance for acting dumb is that they die. Right.
I also think that guy was like just naturally a piece of shit, and he was probably thinking like, "Oh, I found a new species."
Yeah, they also like do a little bit of legwork of making this guy seem like kind of an arrogant like prick. Like, I don't know.
And he gets a worm down his throat. That's what happens.
Yeah.
I also love towards the end where Waylon gets to the ruins, and they've kind of had this dialogue back and forth all throughout the movie about helmets, no helmets. And they're like, hey man, I don't know. That one guy got filled with worms. So like, maybe leave your helmet on. He's like, I don't know. Smells fine to me. I was like, yep. That's like every Walmart across the Midwest right now. Like, mask off. I'm fine. And yes, the deep throat scene did take Jessica out of the room. She did leave when that worm went down that man's throat. There's two great deep throat scenes.
Yeah, I thought it was going to go in his like broken arm, and I thought that would have been a grosser scene, but it went down his throat, and I was like,
and then the engineer takes one.
Not that bad.
Not that bad. Compared to the alternative, it going into his broken arm, not that bad.
I don't know.
He could have been more of a champ about it, right?
Yeah.
At least it didn't go up his butt.
Yeah, because it seemed like the engineer was getting it.
What's that rock verse?
I feel like.
Yeah, the whole man. The last note I have in my notes is this ending fucking rules. The whole final sequence.
Yeah, because the whole entire movie, I fucking forgot about the squid baby.
Which, by the way, when he first comes out, love that little squid.
He realizes he's trapped. He starts thrashing around.
Yeah.
Because you think what's going to come out, right? You're like, here we go. Time for an alien. And you're like, no, it's this like weird squid boy. He's got no face.
Squid boy.
He's just got this weird little dome and a couple of tenants. Like, he reminds me of like that alien baby from Men in Black. Like, he's just wriggling around and he gets sprayed, and that's all you see. I was like, this guy's fun. He's kind of a little cutie. Like, I would own a plush of that guy. He's a little cute baby. And you're right. You get to think he's dead, and then it's like when it comes back at the end,
it's
so
fucking
awesome.
enormous.
Huge, yeah.
Bigger than this giant alien, and even the alien is like fucking bracing against the door frame, like fuck.
I love the way they set up everything that comes together very quickly in the end. First of all, just love the visual of Shaw, who's been through hell and back, because you almost feel like the movie's just over at this point. You're like, the ship got blown up, the mission's been achieved, and you're like, oh wait, there's something left. She like goes back. The visual of her with that fire axe just rules, because it's like now it's when you're trying to kick in. You mentioned it too, Nick. It's like this movie's got to live in the shadow of Ellen Ripley. It's got this female lead, but trying to figure out a different way to set up that character so it's not just hitting the same beats. So she's not this rough and tough badass from start to finish. She's really got to work her way there, and even still, like never. She's not the action hero even at the end. Still, she's still just getting the shit kicked out of her. Even in the final scene, like the fire axe doesn't get to play in very much. Like there's no final she kills the monster scene. It's all about setting up those two entities.
There's a fun little detail too that I caught this time around, that when the squid monster thing is getting the engineer, it's also still, its tentacles are also still kind of reaching for her, and there's a moment where one kind of wraps around her ankle. And she like wiggles her way out of it, and just watching it this most recent time, I was like, "Oh, it almost got her!" Like, so I love that. But she's a quick thinker to just say like, "Well, I'm gonna put the one monster against the other one and hope that works."
And it feels awesome when it happens, which it like almost shouldn't work, because it's not like nowadays where it's like, oh, you got a whole movie to build up this monster and this monster fight. But like, there's something so strong of, first of all, when you see that engineer come, flying through the door, like David tells her, hey, that guy's coming for you. And then he's already there. Like there's no time to get ready. He just like kicks the door down. He's all messed up. He looks so pissed off because like he's been asleep for thousands of years, wakes up. He's like, oh, I get to pick up where I left off. Nope. Everybody's dead. My ship's gone. I'm so pissed off. All I can do is just, kill whoever's left. So mad. And then meanwhile you have the alien element, and just the brief moment of her kicking that door open and they like clash for a minute. I'm like, oh fuck, that rules. I'm like, this is movies, baby. This rules. Yes. I just like you just like, I can't wait to see how this one ends up. And the engineer, like, even these guys are strong, these guys are tough. Like he really does almost work it out for a few minutes there, where like it really, obviously that thing grabbed any person, you just be dinner in no time. But like this dude, like he's like bracing at the door. He's
I wish I had those knees. I wish I had those knees.
He's got those thick thunder thighs.
Yeah, he's got like a 16-pack.
Yeah, beautiful. You got that great Squidward side
core.
profile.
He's got that core. He's got that good core strength.
Yeah, and Jess mentioned it. I love how big that alien is, because it's like you think, okay, it's got to, because as we know how these aliens work, is like they get in you, they incubate, they grow. It's like it seems like that was just needless formality with this squid guy, because he gets yanked out C-section style, and he's like, well, I'm just gonna hang out here and continue to grow.
I'm not done growing. Yeah,
doesn't matter to me. I know what I'm here to do. I'm gonna get real big. And I love how it's this weird proto. Everything's like not quite the iconography that we know. It's not. It's like reminiscent of a face hugger, but it's 1,000 times the size. It's got all these tentacles. It's got still kind of the weird vaginal mouth thing going on, but still not as obvious as the face huggers do. It's got like all these weird spikes and stuff coming out. And yes, it just when it beats you, that guy just deep throats the shit out of you, which is, you hate to see that. You hate to see it. No, it's tough.
But yeah, back to our little blue spawn, our little blue teenage xenomorph. What a just goofy looking. I just love him. I love him so much. He's the cutest of the xenomorph.
Really, he's cute.
Yeah, I could just see him like having awkward posture and kind of just like walking around, like
walking like through the mall, holding hands. Like, no, we're not going in Hot Topic.
Yeah, I just think he's cute. Like, I've never thought that about any of the other xenomorphs, but today I'm watching. I'm like, oh, he's a cutie. He's like Just the little
And when his little extra mouth comes out, you're like,
and it doesn't come out quite all the way. Like it's a little
it's so
It's
cute.
like, it makes you almost go like, oh look, he's trying to do the thing.
trying.
He can't do it.
Yeah, he can't do it.
We all know what he's trying to do. He can't quite get it right though. He doesn't have the right ingredients yet. That's not going to come till
I like that guy.
He's good. I would love to see more of him. He's got a weird
name,
dinosaur quality.
I'm sure he has a formal name.
Yeah, they probably do. They always do, right? Because the ones in Covenant are like the neomorphs, and which, by the way, I do really like the weird action figure sized one in Covenant. It dances in unison with David. Doesn't that happen, or did I dream that? There's
he's like
they dance.
Yeah, they have a little square dance.
I'm googling right now. What is the name of the xenomorph in Prometheus? Oh, they called it the Deacon.
The Deacon.
Yeah, they didn't put morph in it. It's a deacon, a horrifying xenomorph-like creature in the film Prometheus. Well, I don't think he's horrifying. I think he's a little cutie boy.
He's fucking cute.
I think he's trying his best, and
he's doing his best. Yeah, he's going through an awkward phase.
We support him.
He's gonna be a full-on cardinal someday. Is a deacon is a cardinal higher than a deacon?
Yeah, is it the evolution of one? I do, and it does feel to me again like Ridley Scott really just going at the end, like, I don't know. And we'll put a xenomorph in it. Don't worry. We'll put one at the very end. And he's like, make it look a little weird, though.
That'd be a more interesting ending to this movie if it took a Tim Burton Planet of the Apes route, and then they get back to Earth, and then the Deacon is now the Pope on Earth. He's like, oh.
All their statues look like the Deacon.
They're like, oh, fuck.
Tim Burton beat him to it.
The Deacon Monument in Washington. Isn't that how it ends? There's like the Lincoln Monument's a monkey.
It's an ape, yeah.
What a fucking weird. Like what?
They had to put out this. I remember this crazy infographic that explained how that would make sense, and it was just so many fucking steps to end up where oh yeah, why would Abraham Lincoln be a monkey? How somehow there's so many different steps you had to follow for that to even track.
It's because he showed me his scarecrow, and I reacted angrily to it, and that just set him off on a different chain of evolution.
Kick that monkey's ass. Yeah. Did you ever talk to me like that again, you piece of shit? And that's Prometheus.
That's Prometheus. Oh,
I do want to respect our restraint and not talk about phallus-shaped aliens and vagina monsters too much.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you want to circle back around to it,
previous episodes we
almost seemed like you were
teeing a whole episode on boob sucking.
Yeah, that's true. We didn't talk about
this. I really thought this was going to be a full episode about dick aliens and vagina monsters. I really.
You guys went long on boob sucking on one episode because I think I tuned into that one.
Yeah. Halloween 3. There's a lot of there's more boob sucking than most in that movie. I would say actually the amount of boob sucking Halloween 3. Contrast to how much we talked about it, it's like a 1 to 100 ratio.
It really is.
Oh man. No, but yeah, there's certainly phallus and vaginal imagery in this film, and I don't think it's by mistake, friends. I think that there is some intent there.
Well, you know what? I mean, now that we are talking about it, it kind of makes it interesting, though, that what we as humans recognize as sexual imagery also goes back to the architecture of the beings who created us. So, they're making ships and weapons and whatnot that looks like dicks and vaginas, right? And they're like, I don't know, we'll give them those things. What's the journey of that? Is that by coincidence? What's that all about? I don't know. That's what the third film would have been, and we never got to see it. A damn shit. And
like all good Lindelof projects, they're not going to give you all the answers. We were talking about this earlier. I think probably when I was having connectivity issues, that I like that this movie doesn't have a scene where some scientist is like, all right, now I'm going to explain the entire plot to you of what's happening here. I'm so glad that scene is not in this movie, and that, and thankfully, yes, I would have liked a sequel to sort of answer some of the questions that are set up in this film. But Hollywood is not doesn't always give us what we want all the time for various reasons, and we didn't get that film, and we just have to live with the one that we did get. And I think that there are enough areas where you can draw your own conclusion that I am satisfied. That I'm satisfied with this movie, and I don't like the plot holes. To me, are a feature, not a bug, in my opinion.
Yeah,
that's a great point, because at no point by the end of the film do any of the characters really know. They don't get any of their questions answered. David maybe starts having kind of a running thought about things, but that guy's not going to explain it to anybody. So I think it leaves you in the position of those characters, and it's posing the general big questions. Where we come from, why are we here, what's the point, and really doesn't come up with any meaningful answer by the end, and just kind of leaves you still at the same point, which I think is something that would aggravate audiences more even now, because I hear that a lot of times, like, well, I don't really know what the point of that was, right? Like, what was the point? Or like, it didn't make sense. It didn't wrap it up at the end. But to me, I think that is everything this movie is contending with. It's contending with questions that Ridley Scott does not have the answer to, and how those probably are what disturb him at the end of the day. And those are the things that he's still trying to make peace with. And maybe it's by design that the sequel, because it feels like it's teed up the sequel to be like, oh, we're going to find out, we're going to get those answers. Maybe I don't really know. I've not looked into it enough. Maybe his intent was, oh, in the sequel, you're going to get even less of an answer. And
I think that kind of like goes with what the movie is trying to say, where, we're not meant to know the answers of where we came from. Like, it's dangerous to know that. And so we're not going to get the answers that they're seeking, the characters in the movie. And I think that says a lot to it. I also think the fact that, like, very few movies, I think, like, I revisit as much as I revisit Prometheus, because I really do revisit this movie a lot. Like, I'll just throw it on randomly. And very few movies I actually, like, remember the moment I saw it, and like where I was, like when it was, like, but I think that speaks a lot to the quality of the film, that I remember those things very vividly, because I'll always remember the first time I saw this movie.
Yeah, I think it holds up well. I definitely have grown to love it a lot more in subsequent years than I did the first time I'd seen it, where I was kind of taken on this journey I wasn't really ready for. I just didn't know didn't know what I'd signed up for. Or I'd signed up for something else and got something different. But I think it's really one of the great science fiction movies of the last decade, if not 2 decades. Like, it really gets to be a kind of movie that you just don't see on this scale too often anymore, where it is exploring these heady concepts. And to your point, Connor, not only are you never meant to know, but like, if you got the answers to them, you'd just be grossly disappointed at the end of it all.
Yeah, exactly.
To travel across the stars and perhaps find that we were just created because somebody realized they could and thought they'd see what happens, in the same way we're seeing David go on that exact journey through the movie. You'd be quite disappointed to learn that the design wasn't that intelligent, and it was just sort of haphazard. And also, if the origin ever looked back at you, it would be disappointed in you as well. Like, just, those are the kinds of things I think Scott's really interested with.
Yeah. And Damon Lindelof.
True. Yeah.
I think the journey for the answers with, like, Damon Lindelof's work is more interesting than the actual answers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, the whole journey of, like, Lost is way more interesting than the final, like, realization of what it all was.
Yeah, and The Leftovers, which is like one of my favorite shows of all time, is the whole point of The Leftovers is that, like, let the mystery be. Like, we're not really going to give you the mystery is never going to be solved. That's pretty much, like, given to you up front. Like, we're never going to tell you what exactly happened, and you're just more so supposed to sit with what your beliefs.
Yeah, and it creates conversation, and you're always going to try to decipher it and figure out the answers, and then it births, amazing podcasts like this.
That's right. That's right. Which on that note, as we wind down here, I always make it a point to ask Nick, is there anything on Prometheus that we missed? Anything left that we
Oh
need to
man, let
discuss?
me just scroll through the notes and see if I missed anything that I wanted to. And because I did make notes, like I did my homework here, guys. I watched. Not only did I watch the film, but I was. Oh, okay. This isn't about the movie at all, but I just have to bring this up because I needed to ask like a subject matter expert, and I think you are one, Taylor. So I don't know for sure, but I'm just going. So in the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Oh
no, this is Connor. Field this.
Oh, okay, Connor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
The Fast and the Furious
that guy.
So has Charlize's character ever doesn't interact with Idris Elba's character from Hobbs and Shaw, right? Like there's no connection there.
No, but it's suspected that she is the one talking to him. Or no, it's suspected she's the one that hired him and is the one talking to Hobbs and Shaw at the end of Hobbs and Shaw.
So all I'm saying is they need to put these two villains together. I don't know how Hobbs and Shaw ends, but they need to put these two villains together in a movie, have them be a couple.
Well, it's implied they be knocking boots in this movie.
Yeah, because they got. I'm telling you, there's a vibe between the, and maybe it's that Charlize Theron has a vibe with everyone because she also had great chemistry with Seth Rogen in that movie, The Long Shot.
What the fuck?
So
how does she have chemistry with literally anybody?
Maybe she's just a phenomenal actress, and I'm selling her short, and she just has chemistry with everybody. But reunite Idris Elba and Charlize Theron, Fast and the Furious franchise.
Hobbs and Shaw 2.
Hobbs and Shaw 2. Let's do it.
If nothing else, there's no way they couldn't find a character for her to play in Suicide Squad 3. Like, no way. If she says she wants in, you find the role for her.
Yeah. And the last thing that I just wanted to say is that I wanted to bring up another thing about how not only, so we talked about how this is sort of one of the last, really big budget sort of, not one of the last, but one of the few in the last 10 years, big budget sci-fi films. One of the last examples of, I can think of, a studio just being pretty ballsy with their IP.
Being do what you want with it.
Yeah, just do it feels good with this hot IP that we got here. And then another thing too is that I don't think this movie gets enough credit. I think about a movie like The Batman that's coming out, where that movie is going to have a complimentary HBO Max series, and there's going to be a complimentary podcast, and all these movies, all these big budget studio IP movies seem to have so many multimedia elements tied into them upon release. And I think that Ridley Scott and the kind folks at Fox sort of did that with this film. And it's one of the earlier examples of that.
With Blade Runner 2049, they had 4 different shorts leading up to that.
Yeah, they have the anime.
I think that's a Ridley Scott thing, where he's
so I
want these shorts to lead up to the movie.
They did that in Covenant as well. They do that really weird thing where James Franco's in it for 1 minute and dies. And then there was a whole 15-minute short film about his character completely separate from the movie. These weird. There's definitely, the through line is Ridley Scott. So there is something there where he was playing with something that I think, like you said, Nick, is developing more with how, because everything is just so, everything is all the time now. It's there's the lifespan of these movies and these stories and these characters. It's people are just looking to consume it at all times. So if you can keep the morphine drip going, they're going to be give me more, whether it's on the YouTube or there's a tie-in series or whatever. You're right. I think he's a little prescient, and it feels kind of weird at the time. I remember the James Franco thing particularly making me go what? But Ridley Scott is somebody I think of as a mad scientist filmmaker.
Because James Franco isn't, you don't see him at all besides a photograph in Covenant. You see him in the pod, and then he blows up.
His opening scene is burning to a crisp.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's not in the
Most
movie
of
at
us would
all.
probably hope to see James Franco. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Not me. I mean, he did some bad stuff. Come on, allegedly.
We would allegedly love to see that. Yeah, I love this movie, man. I didn't even quite realize it until I watched it again today, and I was like, wow, this is just a kind of a one of a kind movie. That
was my takeaway. I obviously picked this movie to talk about, so I liked it on some level. But my takeaway when I finished it, because I watched half of it yesterday and then the other half today, and I just finished it, and I was like, I fucking love this movie. This is a great movie.
When I saw this on the list of movies we were talking about this month, I was so stoked because I don't know really anybody that loves this movie as much as I do, because I fucking love this movie.
Yeah, and it's one of those things though that I feel the same way. I always feel like I have to defend this movie or
same. Anytime someone is like, "Have you seen Prometheus?" I'm like, what the fuck about it?
Yeah, what do you want to? Yeah, exactly.
What do you have to say about Prometheus? Because I remember when I got out of our when I saw it, my friends were like, "That was really fucking mid," and I'm like, "The fuck are you talking about? What is mid?" And that movie was fucking awesome.
That's the thing is that I've always liked this. And I do feel like there's been a critical reevaluation of this movie recently.
Yeah.
Where people have come around and been like, no, that movie actually rules. And I think that's because we didn't really know how truly mid some IP could be. Some of these big budget franchise extension films could be. We didn't know how truly mid.
Which is it's happening to a lot of movies that people on Twitter would just conform to shitting on. They're like, everybody hates this movie, so I'm going to shit on this movie as well. And then everybody's like, oh wait, actually this movie's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's happening to a lot of movies that were shitted on when it came out. Mm-hmm. And people are like, actually this movie's kind of good.
Yeah, and you know what? I will invite more of that reception, even if it's belated, because that's what you need to get more movies like this. And
bring more initially mid movies to Really Scared.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting on Idle Hands.
Guys, I would come back to talk about Idle Hands. But actually a Devon Sawa movie that I wanted to talk about more than Idle Hands, which is because I was pretty sure you guys had already done Prometheus. I was really excited to hear that you hadn't. But my backup that I was going to pitch was Final Destination.
Oh my god, yes.
The first one.
I love the Final Destination
which
series.
Would be a whole bunch of fun to talk about.
Oh yeah. I fucking love Final Destination.
You guys did Event Horizon, right?
We've not.
We haven't done it. Man.
That's another one that I would.
We briefly chatted about it, I think, but we never actually fully talked about it.
Oh no, you guys! The other one that I saw that you guys had done for sure that I was like, ooh, I would have talked about that is In the Mouth of Madness, which fucking bangs. But
that movie's fantastic. Well, look, on that same token, Nick, it's been great to have you. We'd love to have you back to discuss any scary movie that you were compelled to.
This was so much fun. I'm glad that I was so nervous that I wasn't going to get through all the little things that I wanted to talk about with it, but we had plenty of time. So this was so much fun. Thank you guys for having me on.
Hell yeah, brother. It's been awesome. Well worth the wait, and we can't wait to do it again with you. Real quick, of course, for all the good ghouls and goblins out there, where can they find you online these days? You can find me at Den of Geek. I'm currently reviewing the revival of Dexter New Blood. I have weekly reviews up on Den of Geek that you can check in with. You can also see me December 4th in Los Angeles at Spectacular for the Schmoedown. I will be there. I believe your representative. Well, I am the representative. Oh, so I will. Yeah, no, your client, the Rager Rick Radis, will be there. I believe. Yes, and I'll be there too. You'll be there too. Cool. I will be there. I'll probably be behaving a little bit differently than I am now, but
I will be there.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, hey, it's been a joy to have you on. Can't wait to do it again. Thank you for bringing this movie to us because, man, this is a lot of fun to talk about, this one. And, of course, you can always catch us live on this channel, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time every Thursday next week. I guess we probably won't be live next week because it's Thanksgiving, and I hope you have a good one, but we will be releasing a new episode alongside our friends Craig, the Barbarian Gagne, and Jeff King Khan. Ready or Not, a modern classic. Everybody loves
with
this
those
movie.
guys.
Thanksgivings don't turn out like Ready or Not.
Yes.
That's a good point. Yeah, we got like a family gathering film.
That actually is a great movie for Thanksgiving. And those guys are going to crush it. I can't think of two more entertaining folks to watch that one and discuss it with. So yeah, I'll be I was going to say I'll be watching, but that would be a lie because I'm going to be fucking in a food coma, just all up in that new Beatles Get Back documentary that's hitting Disney Plus. You will find me watching that, running it back. I'll probably watch it twice that night. But
fair.
Yeah. But I'll catch up with this episode because Ready or Not is a really fun one. And if you want to see the guys that are making the new Scream film,
right. Those guys are about to be super relevant in a big, bad way. So, Ready or Not rules. Can't wait to talk about it next week. Be sure to find us then. Again, YouTube and Twitch here at What Real Entertainment, and audio goes up on all your favorite podcast apps the very next day. So we will see you then. Thank you again, Nick, for joining us. It's been a true joy. And stay spooky out there, my friends. We'll see you next week. And remember,